The Urantia Book, Section 4, The Life and Teachings of Jesus. Paper 163. Ordination of the 70 at Magadan. A few days after the return of Jesus and the 12 to Magadan from Jerusalem, Abner and a group of some 50 disciples arrived from Bethlehem. At this time there were also assembled at Magadan Camp the evangelic corps, the women's corps, and about 150 other true and tried disciples from all parts of Palestine. After devoting a few days to visiting and the reorganization of the camp, Jesus and the 12 began a course of intensive training for this special group of believers, and from this well-trained and experienced aggregation of disciples, the Master subsequently chose the 70 teachers to send them forth to proclaim the gospel of the kingdom. This regular instruction began on Friday, November the 4th, and continued until Sabbath, November 19th. Jesus gave a talk to this company each morning. Peter taught methods of public preaching. Nathanael instructed them in the art of teaching. Thomas explained how to answer questions, while Matthew directed the organization of their group finances. The other apostles participated in this training in accordance with their special experience and natural talents. One ordination of the 70. The 70 were ordained by Jesus on the Sabbath afternoon, November 19th, at the Magadan Camp, and Abner was placed at the head of these gospel preachers and teachers. This corps of 70 consisted of Abner and 10 of the former apostles of John, 51 of the earlier evangelists, and 8 other disciples who had distinguished themselves in the service of the kingdom. About 2 o'clock on this Sabbath afternoon, between showers of rain, a company of believers, augmented by the arrival of David and the majority of his messenger corps, and numbering over 400, assembled on the shore of the Lake of Galilee to witness the ordination of the 70. Before Jesus laid his hands upon the heads of the 70 to set them apart as gospel messengers, addressing them, he said, "The harvest is indeed plenteous, but the laborers are few. Therefore I exhort all of you to pray that the Lord, better said the Father of harvest, which is the Paradise Father, will send still other laborers into his harvest. I am about to set you apart as messengers of the kingdom. I am about to send you to Jew and Gentile, and lambs among wolves. As you go your ways 2 and 2, I instruct you to carry neither purse nor extra clothing, for you go forth on this first missions for only a short season." And this is a misnomer in the Bible book, because everyone is thinking that it was appointed to the apostles, but in actuality it was appointed to the 70 teachers. And because the Bible is completely incorrect and outdated, and knows a lot of distortions. Of course, this story is also distorted and not based on the complete truth. Salute no man, by the way, attend only to your work. Whenever you go to stay at a home, first say, peace be to this household. If those who love peace live therein, you shall abide there. If not, then shall you depart, and having selected this home, remain there for your stay in that city, eating and drinking whatever is set before you. And you do this, of course, because the laborer is worthy of his sustenance. Move not from house to house, because a better lodging may be offered. Remember, as you go forth, proclaiming peace on earth and good will among men, you must contend with bitter and self-deceived enemies. Therefore be as wise as serpents, while you are also as harmless as doves. These sentences are not really new. Because before Michael arrived on Urantia, because Michael is Michael of Magadan, who we know better as Jesus of Nazareth, and before Michael came, all these sentences were already in existence. He used to already framework that people were familiar to. When Jesus had thus spoken to the 70, he began with Abner, and as they knelt in a circle about him, laid his hands upon the head of every man. Early the next morning, Abner sent the 70 messengers into all the cities of Galilee, Samaria, and Judea. And these 35 couples went forth, preaching and teaching for about 6 weeks, all of them returning to the new camp near Pella in Perea on Friday, December the 30th of the year 29 AD. Alright, 2. The rich young men and others, over 50 disciples who sought ordination and appointment to membership in the 70, were rejected by the committee appointed by Jesus to select these candidates. This committee consisted of Andrew, Abner, and the acting head of the evangelistic corps. In all cases where this committee of 3 were not unanimous in agreement, they brought the candidate to Jesus, and while the master never rejected a single person who craved ordination as a gospel messenger, there were more than a dozen who, when they had talked with Jesus, no more desired to become gospel messengers. Except for one, of course. One earnest disciple came to Jesus saying, Master, I would be one of your new apostles, but my father is very old and near death. Could I be permitted to return home to bury him? And to this man Jesus said, My son, the foxes have holes, and the birds of heaven have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head, which was not really true, by the way. That is a misnomer, actually, because Jesus had always a place to stay. Even when they were hunting on him, he always had a place to stay. You are a faithful disciple, and you can remain such while you return home to minister to your loved ones. But not so with my gospel messengers. They have forsaken all to follow me and proclaim the kingdom. If you would be an ordained teacher, you must let others bury the dead while you go forth to publish the good news. Of course, because if you are if you have decided to proclaim the good news, then you're not of this world anymore. So burying the dead is something of this world, and you're not part of it. So that is why actually people who call themselves believers should not be engaged in political systems and whatever. They do not belong there, because these are all by humans created systems, and everything that is human created you're not part of, because that is part of this world. And paradise is not here. This is not part of this world. It's a completely different world. So if you want to belong to the paradise, then you need to realize that you're no longer part of this world anymore. Another disciple came to the master and said, I would become an ordained messenger, but I would like to go to my home for a short while to comfort my family. And Jesus replied, if you would be ordained, you must be willing to forsake all. The gospel messengers cannot have divided affections. No man, having put his hand to the plow, if he turns back, is worthy to become a messenger of the kingdom. Then Andrew brought to Jesus a certain rich young man who was a devout believer and who desired to receive ordination. This young man, Matadormus, was a member of the Jerusalem Sanhedrin. He had heard Jesus teach and had been subsequently instructed in the gospel of the kingdom. By Peter and the other apostles, Jesus talked with Matadormus concerning the requirements of ordination and requested that he defer decision until after he had thought more fully about the matter. And then early the next morning, as Jesus was going for a walk, this young man accosted him and said, Master, I would know from you the assurance of eternal life, seeing that I have observed all the commandments from my youth. I would like to know what more I must do to gain eternal life. In answer to this question, Jesus said, if you keep all the commandments, do not commit adultery, do not kill, do not steal, do not bear false witness, do not defraud, honor your parents. You dwell, but salvation is the reward of faith, not merely of works. Do you believe this gospel of the kingdom? And Matadormus answered, yes, I do believe everything that you say, and your apostles have taught me. And Jesus said, then are you indeed my disciple and a child of the kingdom, paradise. Then said the young man, but Master, I am not content to be your disciple. I would be one of your new messengers. When Jesus heard this, he looked down upon him with a great love and said, I will have you to be one of my messengers if you are willing to pay the price, if you will supply the one thing which you lack. Matadormus replied, Master, I will do anything if I may be allowed to follow you. Jesus, kissing the kneeling young man on the forehead, said, "If you would be my messenger, go and sell all that you have, and when you have bestowed the proceeds upon the poor or upon your brethren, come and follow me, and you shall have treasures in heaven." Better said paradise. When Matadormus heard this, his countenance fell, because he arose and went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. And there it comes. And this is a great lesson for all of us in the roaring times that we are in. Are we really prepared, if that is necessary, to leave the home, to leave everything behind us, and only take what we have as clothing at that moment? So this lad had some difficulties, because all of a sudden there was asked of him to make the choice. Does this person, stay in the world of materialism, success, money, and whatever that this world is driving on, or is he truly choosing for paradise, the path that leads to paradise? So this wealthy young Pharisee had been raised to believe that wealth was the token of God's favor. So here comes the clinch, because the Jews and the Jews of today still follow the things by their laws, by their own created, by humans created laws. So they believed that wealth was from God, but in actuality we do not understand the true wealth of God in any way, shape or form, because we never have experienced it yet. What true wealth is in the eyes of the Father in paradise. The Master wanted to deliver him from the love of wealth, not necessarily from the wealth, while the disciples of Jesus did not part with all their worldly goods. The apostles and the 70 did. So Matadormus did not understood. He took it literally, but he did not understood that he needed to let go of this love for possessions, love for money, love for status, love for wealth, love for this by humans created things and world. Matadormus decided to be one of the 70 new messengers, and that was the reason for Jesus require him to part with all of his temporal possessions, better said beliefs. It is not really well stated here, because it's all about belief. Jesus wanted this person to set aside all these man-created ideas and beliefs and concepts. Almost every human being has some one thing which is held to as a pet evil, and which the entrance into the kingdom of paradise, heaven, requires. Well, this is also not really completely, because if you die, you shed off the flesh, and what they are lacking here to say in the story, that Ascension is the path that leads us to paradise, which is central universe. So actually, in actuality, everything is completely misunderstood and miswritten. Yeah? If you die, you shed off the flesh. If you die, you have no possessions any longer, because why should you take with them? You cannot take it with you. So this is in actuality the main lesson of this chapter. It's all about, are you willing to walk the path that leads you to paradise that is laid in central universe? Are you willing to walk the path of the divine perfected will of the Paradise Father? And if the Father is asking you to leave things behind, are you willing to do so? That is the whole message in this here. So Jesus foresaw that Matadormus with his riches could not possibly become an ordained associate of men who had forsaken all for the gospel. At the same time, he saw that without his riches he would become the ultimate leader of all of them. But like Jesus' own brethren, he never became great in the kingdom, because he deprived himself of that intimate and personal association with the Master, which might have been his experience had he been willing to do at this time the very thing which Jesus asked, which was undoing himself from all these man-created beliefs and ideas and concepts, and which several years subsequently he actually did. Okay, part 3, the discussion about wealth. By the time Jesus had finished talking with Matadormus, Peter and a number of the apostles had gathered about him, and as the rich young man was departing, Jesus turned round to face the apostles and said, "You see how difficult it is for those who have riches." Better said, this is completely miswritten sentence, because it should have been, "You see how difficult it is for those whom are so clinged to man-created ideas and belief systems to let go of them." And that's so true, because look at nowadays, the majority of humanity is not able to let go of all these by man created, by humanity themselves created belief systems, beliefs, concepts, ideas, and ideals. You have a saying that it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for the heathen to inherit eternal life. And I declare that it is easy for this camel to go through the needle's eye, as for these self-satisfied rich ones to enter the kingdom of heaven. And that's the whole point with all those people who claim to be very rich and who claim the world as if it is theirs. Eventually, when the time is there and they lose everything, and this time is already there, because all these people are now getting their judgment in one way, shape or form, and they are already losing things. but that's of course something that's being kept out of sight. And yeah, these people cannot deal with that. When Peter and the apostles heard these words, they were astonished exceedingly, so much so that Peter said, "Who then, Lord, can be saved? Shall all who have riches be kept out of the kingdom?" And Jesus replied, "No, Peter, but all who put their trust in riches shall hardly enter into the spiritual life that leads to eternal progress. But even then, much which is impossible to men is not beyond the reach of the Father in heaven. Rather should we recognize that with God all things are possible. It is on your free will. Do you truly choose for the path that leads you to eternal life, which is laid in the central universe, in a place called paradise? Or, yeah, do you not? That is the question. That is the free will choice that we have. As they went off by themselves, Jesus was grieved that Matadormus did not remain with them, for he greatly loved him. And when they walked down by the lake, they sat there beside the water. And Peter, speaking for the 12, who were all present by this time, said, "We are troubled by your words. To the rich young man shall we require those who would follow you to give up all their worldly goods?" And Jesus said, "No, Peter, only those who would become apostles and who desire to live with me as you do and as one family. But the Father requires that the affections of his children be pure and undivided. Whatever thing or person comes between you and the love of the truths of the kingdom must be surrendered, unless the Father sees that thing fit for the kingdom and is asking you to use it for a task or job or whatever that he is asking you, in which God the Father sees that specific thing fitted in. If one's wealth does not invade the precincts of the soul, it is of no consequences in the spiritual life of those who would enter the kingdom. Yeah, I think this whole idea is so highly misunderstood. What I say, everything is spiritual, and people need to realize that it's all meant and based on spiritual. Are you prepared to give up your beliefs? Are you prepared to give up everything that has been taught to you? Are you willing to say that you do not know a thing? Are you willing to say and to acknowledge that you do not know a thing? Yourself. The kingdom of heaven is like a householder who was a large employer of men and who went out early in the morning to hire laborers to work in his vineyard. When he had agreed with the laborers to pay them a denarius a day, he sent them into the vineyard. Then he went about 9 o'clock, and seeing others standing in the marketplace idle, and said to them, "Go you also to work in my vineyard, and whatsoever is right I will pay you." And they went at once to work again. He went out about 12 and about 3, and did likewise. And going to the marketplace about 5 in the afternoon, he found still others standing there, waiting for a job, and required of them, "Why do you stand here all day?" And the man answered, "Because nobody has hired us." Then said the householder, "Go you also to work in my vineyard, and whatever is right I will pay you." When evening came, this owner of the vineyard said to his servant, "Call the laborers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last hired and ending with the first." So when those who were hired about 5 o'clock came, they received a denarius each, and so it was each by each. When the other men who were hired at the beginning of the day saw how the later ones were paid, they expected to receive more, because they thought in their human mind and from their human perspective that they should earn more, because they were already for hours in the vineyard working. But like the others, every man received only a denarius, and when each had received his pay, they complained to the householder, saying, "These men who were hired last worked only 1 hour, and yet you have paid them the same as us who have borne the burden of the day in the scorching sun." Well, and then the householder says to these workers, "My friends, I do you no wrong. Did each of you agree to work for a denarius a day? So take now that which is yours and go your way, for it is my desire to give to those who came last as much as I have given to you. Is it not lawful for me to do what I will with my own, or do you begrudge my generosity because I desire to be good and to show mercy?" All right. Point 4, farewell to the 70. It was stirring time about the Magadan Camp. The day the 70 went forth on their first mission, early that morning in his last talk with this group, Jesus placed emphasis on the following. 1, and this is actually the most important piece of this whole chapter, I think. Yeah, this is not really. 1, the gospel of the kingdom must be proclaimed to all the world, to a Gentile as well as to the Jew. This means that we do not have to proclaim the Bible. We only have to proclaim a simple message that takes one piece of paper. And that simple message is that you are saying to those around you that they are a child of God. And if they accept this, that they then also accept sonship in God. And if they accept this also, that they must be willing to follow the path of the perfected will of the Paradise Father. And you always, of course, give them that they have free will to choose for the path of the paradise or not. This is something that is missing in this list. We are not allowed in any way, shape, or form to enforce things unto our brethren. God gave us free will, and if someone chooses differently, that is their fair right. If someone doesn't want to walk the path of ascension that leads them to paradise and into light and life, that is their good right to do so, because they have free will. Then 2, while ministering to the sick, refrain from teaching the expectation of miracles. So nothing is based on miracles and wonders, and even in this day and age, there are still people looking for miracles and wonders, which is not in the meaning at all that they take place. Ministering to the sick means that you proclaim the word and speak this to their soul. 3, because sickness is actually coming forth out of a very confused soul that is completely confused and does not really know. So if you take care of the sick, you don't have to lay hands on it. You can do, but it's not a necessary thing. What is necessary is that you speak directly to the person's soul, and that you speak to the soul the message. And then 3, proclaim a spiritual brotherhood of the sons of God, not an outward kingdom of worldly power and material glory. So say what the plan of God is. The plan of God is a brotherhood of men, not only in this world, but in all worlds where humans are living, not only in this universe, but in each and every universe of universes. This is a spiritual brotherhood. Another plan of, and this spiritual brotherhood is based on the fatherhood of God. So that is also something you proclaim. So the whole message is very simple. You do not need any Bible book for this to help your brethren. And as a matter of fact, you do not even have to read the Bible beforehand to proclaim a simple message of paradise. 4, avoid loss of time through overmuch social visiting and other trivialities which might detract from wholehearted devotion to preaching the gospel. And of course, humanity until the day of today are making the things far more complex than Jesus has ever mentioned to be so. 5, if the first house to be selected for a headquarters proves to be a worthy home, abide there throughout the sojourn in that city. And then 6, make clear to all faithful believers that the time for an open break with the religious leaders of the Jews at Jerusalem has now come. Well, this is the same for nowadays. You can proclaim that the time has come for all these leaders in the world, that there comes an open break between the religious leaders and all the leaders in this world, because this time has come. We are seeing this because the majority of the leaders in this world are operating from high levels of greed, confusion, and false power. 7, teach that man's whole duty is summed up in this one commandment: love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your soul, and your neighbor as yourself. This they were to teach as a man's whole duty in place of 613 rules of living expounded by the Pharisees. Okay, when Jesus had talked thus to the 70 in the presence of all the apostles and disciples, Simon Peter took them off by themselves and preached to them their ordination sermon, which was an elaboration of the Master's charge given at the time he laid his hands upon them and set them apart as messengers of the kingdom. Peter exhorted the 70 to cherish in their experience the following virtues. The first one is consecrated devotion, to pray always for more laborers to be sent forth into the gospel harvest. He explained that when one so prays, he will the more likely say, "Here I am, here am I, send me." He admonished them to neglect not their daily worship. 2. True courage. He warned them that they would encounter hostility and be certain to meet with persecution. Peter told them their mission was no undertaking for cowards, and advised those who were afraid to step out before they started, but none withdrew. And in free faith and trust they must go forth on this short mission, wholly unprovided, for they must trust the Father for food and shelter and all other things needful. And this time will also probably come for the human race that is now living in this day and age, with all the uproars that are going on, and threat of war and whatever nonsense these rebellionists among the people are presenting. 4. Zeal and initiative. They must be possessed with zeal and intelligent enthusiasm. They must attend strictly to their master's business. Oriental salutation was a lengthy and elaborate ceremony, of course, because humans are so fond on ceremonies. Therefore had they been instructed to only salute no man by the way, which was a common method of extorting one to go about his business without to waste too much time. It had nothing to do with the matter of friendly greeting. And point 5, kindness and courtesy. The master had instructed them to avoid unnecessary waste of time in social ceremonies, but he enjoyed courtesy toward all with whom they should come in contact. They were to show every kindness to those who might entertain them in their homes. They were strictly warned against leaving a modest home to be entertained in a more comfortable or influential one. And then point 6, ministry to the sick. The 70 were charged by Peter to search out the sick in mind and body, and to do everything in their power to bring about the alleviation or cure for their maladies, for their sickness. And when they had been thus charged and instructed, they started out 2 by 2 on their mission in Galilee, Samaria, and Judea. Point 5, moving to the camp, or better said, moving the camp to Pella. Jesus and the 12 now prepared to establish their last headquarters in Perea near Pella, where the master was baptized in the Jordan. The last 10 days of November were spent in council at Magadan, and on Tuesday December the 6th, the entire company of almost 300 started out at daybreak with all their effects to lodge that night near Pella by the river. This was the same site by the spring that John the Baptist had occupied with his camp several years before. Well, after the breaking up of the Magadan Camp, David Zebedee returned to Bethsaida and began immediately to curtail the messenger's service. The kingdom was taking on a new phase. Daily pilgrims arrived from all parts of Palestine and even from remote regions of the Roman Empire. Believers occasionally came from Mesopotamia and from the lands east of the Tigris. Accordingly, on Sunday, December the 18th, David, with the help of his messenger corps, loaded on to the pack animals the camp equipage, then stored in his father's house, with which he had formerly conducted the camp of Bethsaida by the lake. And then, bidding farewell to Bethsaida for the time being, he proceeded down the lake shore and along the Jordan to a point about 1/2 mile north of the apostolic camp, and in less than a week he was prepared to offer hospitality to almost 1,500 pilgrim visitors. The apostolic camp could accommodate about 500. This was the rainy season in Palestine, and these accommodations were required to take care of the ever-increasing number of inquirers, mostly earnest, who came into Perea to see Jesus and to hear his teaching. Okay. Near the end of December and before the return of the 70, almost 800 visitors were gathered about the Master. And they found lodging in David's camp. Okay. And then point 6, the return of the 70 on Friday, December the 30th, while Jesus was away in the nearby hills with Peter, James, and John. The 70 messengers were arriving by couples, accompanied by numerous believers at the Pella headquarters. All 70 were assembled at the teaching site about 5 o'clock. When Jesus returned to the camp, the evening meal was delayed for more than an hour, while these enthusiastic people for the gospel of the kingdom related their experiences. David's messengers had brought much of this news to the apostles during the previous weeks. But it was truly inspiring to hear these newly ordained teachers of the gospel personally tell how their message had been received by hungry Jews and Gentiles. And it was at this time, just before partaking of the evening meal, that Jesus experienced one of those rare moments of emotional ecstasy which his followers had occasionally witnessed. He said, "I thank you, my Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that while this wonderful gospel was hidden from the wise and self-righteous, the Spirit has revealed their spiritual glories to these children of the kingdom. Yes, my Father, it must have been pleasing in your sight to do this, and I rejoice to know that the good news will spread to all the world, even after I shall have returned to you and the work which you have given me to perform. I am that only I am mightily moved as I realize you are about to deliver all authority into my hands, that only you really know who I am, and that only I really know you and those to whom I have revealed you. And when I have finished this revelation to my brethren in the flesh, I will continue the revelation to your creatures on high. When Jesus had thus spoken to the Father, he turned aside to speak to this and his apostles and ministers. Blessed are the eyes which see and the ears which hear all these things. Let me say to you that many prophets and many of the great men of the past ages have desired to behold what you now see, but it was not granted to them. And many generations of the children of light yet to come will, when they hear of these things, envy you who have heard and see them. Then speaking to all the disciples, he said, you have heard how many cities and villages have received the good news of the kingdom, and how my ministers and teachers have been received by both the Jew and the Gentile. And blessed indeed are these communities which have elected to believe the gospel of the kingdom, but woe upon the light-rejecting inhabitants of Chorazin, Bethsaida, Julius, and Capernaum, the cities which did not well receive these messengers. I declare that if the mighty workers done in these places had been done in Tyre and Sidon, the people of these so-called heathen cities would have long since repented in sackcloth and ashes. It shall indeed be more tolerable for Tyre and Sidon. And the day of judgment. The next day, being the Sabbath day, Jesus went apart with the 70 and said to them, I did indeed rejoice with you when you came back, bearing the good tidings of the reception of the gospel of the kingdom by so many people scattered throughout Galilee, Samaria, and Judea. But why were you so surprisingly elated? Did you not expect that your message would manifest power in its delivery? Did you go forth with so little faith in this gospel that you came and come back in surprise at its effectiveness? And now, while I would not quench your spirit of rejoicing, I would sternly warn you against the subtleties of pride, spiritual pride. If you could understand the downfall of Lucifer, the iniquitous one, you would solemnly shun all forms of spiritual pride. You have entered upon this great work of teaching a mortal man that he is a son of God. And I have shown you the way to go forth to do your duty and be not weary in well-doing. To you and to all who shall follow in your steps down through the ages, let me say, I always stand near, and my invitation call is, and ever shall be, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am true and loyal, and you shall find spiritual rest for your souls. And they found the Master's words to be true when they put his promises to the test. And since that day, countless thousands also have tested and proved the surety of these same promises. And then last, preparation for the last mission. The next few days were busy times in the Magadan Camp. Preparations for Perean mission were being completed. Jesus and his associates were about to enter upon their last mission, the 3 months tour of all Pella. The 3 months tour of all Perea, which terminated only upon the Master's entering Jerusalem for his final labors on earth. Throughout this period, the headquarters of Jesus and the 12 apostles was maintained here at the Magadan Camp. It was no longer necessary for Jesus to go abroad to teach the people. They now came to him in increasing numbers each week and from all parts, not only from Palestine but from the whole Roman world and from the Near East. Although the Master participated with the 70 in the tour of Perea, he spent much of his time at the Magadan Camp teaching the multitude and instructing the 12. Throughout this 3 months period, at least 10 of the apostles remained with Jesus. So the women's corps also prepared to go out 2 and 2 with the 70 to labor in the larger cities of Perea. This original group of 12 women had recently trained a larger corps of 50 women, so they were now at 62, in the work of home visitation and in the art of ministering to the sick and the afflicted. Perpetua, Simon Peter's wife, became a member of this new division of the women's corps and was entrusted with the leadership of the enlarged women's work under Abner. After Pentecost, she remained with her illustrious husband, accompanying him on all of his missionary tours, and on the day Peter was crucified in Rome, she fell to the wild beasts. In the arena, this new women's corps also had as members the wives of Philip and Matthew and the mother of James and John Zebedee. The work of the kingdom now prepared to enter upon its terminal phase under the personal leadership of Jesus, and this present phase was one of the spiritual depth in contrast with the miracle-minded and wonder-seeking multitudes who followed after the Master during the former days of popularity in Galilee. However, there were still any number of his followers who were material-minded and who failed to grasp the truth that the kingdom of heaven is the spiritual brotherhood of man, founded on the eternal fact of the universal fatherhood of God, or You can also say on the fatherhood of God himself, who is the paradise father. And with this said, I have come to the end of reading this paper 163, and thank you so much for listening to this audio video, and God bless you.